morning. Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Susan. Good morning, Jamuna Jaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. Today is Ekadashi, and we have Achyuta Gopi with us. Good morning, Achyuta Gopi. Hare Krishna.
Good morning.
I, are you going to tell us about the Ekadashi, its essence, and the glories? Is that
You
right?
know, I wanted to, but today's the start of Bhishma Panchak, so.
Okay. All right. We'll wait. We'll wait another 11 nights,
But
11
there
years.
is
No
one. There's
problem.
one coming. So there's one specifically dedicated to her. So we'll have to.
Great. Great. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to start the recording. We are going to leave 10 minutes for questions before 8 if possible. And we can go over time. That's fine. It's Sunday. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay, I'm live streaming. Okay. All right, we should be good to go.
Recording in progress.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Happy Ekadashi to everyone. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, as we said just really briefly, um, I had wanted to speak about the glories of Ekadashi, but we'll save that for Mokshada Ekadashi, which I think is coming in about 2 or 3 Ekadashis. So, and that Ekadashi happens to be specifically for Ekadashi Devi. So we'll have a whole session dedicated to the essence of Ekadashi, why there is Ekadashi, how there is Ekadashi. But today, I was thinking, it's Bhishma Panchak, and how can we breeze by without glorifying the great Vaishnav that is Bhishma Dev? We dedicate a whole 5 days just to this Vaishnav. So it would be remiss of me not to honor Bhishma Dev on this beginning of Bhishma Panchak, where we're all grateful to be together. So okay, like what's the big deal? Who? Why? We see that at the end of auspicious months like Kartik, and even at the end of Purushottam Mas, which we just had last year, the last 5 days are like the last hurrah. If you've ever been in a workout or at the gym or something, like you get like the last set of your workout, like those last few push-ups or sit-ups, etc. They're kind of like, okay, push, 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 here we go, last big thing. So the last 5 days of Kartik are like that. We get to pack in as much spiritual benefit and as much spiritual growth as humanly possible. So now's that time to kind of like bear down. And they say that if you haven't done anything for the month of Kartik, you can, feel free to really get in as much benefit as you can now. all of the benefits of Kartik are kind of like ramped up for these last 5 days. So if you were thinking, oh, I wasn't really sure, I wasn't able to kind of like fully dedicate myself during Kartik, now is the time. And the focus of this lecture is kind of the best moments of our lives. I feel like these 5 days are kind of like the best moments of our lives. We can watch so many miracles come to pass during these last 5 days of Kartik, as long as we dedicate ourselves. And dedicating ourselves doesn't have to look a particular way according to anybody else. I feel like this is the lesson of Bhishma Dev's life. Bhishma was a warrior. Bhishma was a great politician. And so maybe his life did not look like the usual trajectory of a saint. Maybe his life didn't look like, oh, I'm going to give up everything and go to the forest and just sit in meditation for the rest of my days. But his life was perfected anyway. And that's kind of what I love about Bhishma. Bhishma's life was one that was, in his mind, dedicated to duty. According to us, kind of looking from the outside, and we'll see how much we can get into it, sometimes we can be a little bit harsh judging when it comes to Bhishma. Sometimes we can romanticize Bhishma's austerities or his what he's given up. So let's start at the beginning. Bhishma was born to a king named Shantanu. So that was his father. But his mother was the great celestial Ganga, the river. And what happens is the Ganga has a personified form. And she sees this king Shantanu. And they have a backstory. Their romance was one that has come from the heavens itself. So there was once a king called Maharaj Mahabhishak. And he was in the court of Lord Brahma. There, within the court of Lord Brahma, everyone had been assembled to see the proceedings, to honor Lord Brahma, and to honor other celestials. In arrives Ganga. And Ganga Devi sets her sights on Maharaj Mahabhishak. Maharaj Mahabhishak sets his sights on Ganga Devi. And they're kind of like gazing at one another romantically. However, Lord Brahma has a problem with this. He says, on this planet, this is a place of tapasya. This is a place of great learning. This is a place of spirituality. This is not a time for your romanticizing. And so he kind of curses them. He says, you should go someplace where you can romance each other properly. Go to the Earth planet. So both of them are sent to the Earth planet to kind of live out this attraction that they have for one another. So this idea of like, when you have like soulmates and people that are fated to be with one another. Yeah, Vedic culture. This is not like something that's just found new and was never seen before. So Maharaj Mahabhishak becomes Shantanu, Ganga, stays Ganga. But they see one another. They have this eye-to-eye contact, this love at first sight. And they've kind of remembered this growing attraction between them. Maharaj Shantanu says, who are you? I have to somehow be connected with you. Be my wife. Ganga says, very well. Under the condition that you never question anything that I do. Don't ask me any questions. Don't ever kind of rethink what I'm doing. Don't try and make sense of it. Just let me do what I'm going to do. If you do question me negatively, that's when I'll leave forever. Maharaj Shantanu, this great king, is so smitten with Ganga Devi that he readily agrees. So in due course of time, Ganga and Shantanu have a child. It's a son. Beautiful child. Ganga Devi immediately takes the child takes the child to the river, and drops the child in the river. The child is gone. Maharaj Shantanu is horrified. He is looking at the future of his dynasty literally going down the river. Like that's it. And he's thinking, what kind of mother is this? And just before he can fix his mouth to ask the question or pose any kind of any kind of disagreement, he remembers that he's already promised that he can't. This happens not once, not twice, but 7 times. 7 children gone. Finally, the 8th arrives and he can't take it anymore. He says, "Stop, wait, just why? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? This seems so hard-hearted and cruel." Ganga, with a very sad but resigned smile, says, "I was waiting for this moment. Those 7 children were not just children. They were sages who had been cursed to take birth on the earth. And they were known as Vasus. Those 7 children those sages had come to me. They said, 'Oh Ganga Devi, we've been cursed to take birth on this earth, but only you can help us. Somehow or other we'll take birth from you. And if you can, end this existence as quickly as possible. We'd just like to get back to our real forms as sages, ready to do tapasya again, and not get caught up in this whole material world bondage entanglement thing.' Ganga Devi readily agrees. But the last of those Vasus, the 8th Vasu, he's cursed to live a very, very long life. And so this Vasu is now this 8th child, which, I really, really, really like Vedic culture, because sometimes you can have this question, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do babies die? Why do newborns leave? All kinds of things. It can just seem very flat, one-dimensional, unless you get into the roles of karma and karmic activity, which is, as is very poignantly described in this pastime, so beyond our understanding. Right? This karmic conversation is so beyond our understanding. Maharaj Shantanu can't understand any of it. What he does know is that he's lost 7 children. Now he has one other, an 8th one, right? And Ganga says, now this 8th child will live a very, very long life. I will take him to be raised by the celestials. He'll be taught all the best of what the gods have to offer. But also, it's time for me to leave you. Forever. Just, by the way. And so Maharaj Shantanu now has to live his days with this remembrance of the time that he had with Ganga Devi. Years go by. Eventually, he comes to see a young boy, because he would spend his days going back to the river Ganga, kind of rethinking all of those times. It's like, his version of like the breakup songs. Like you have a breakup playlist that you go back and you kind of listen to, and all the songs remind you of that one relationship. He'd go back to the river, constantly thinking about his time with Ganga. One day, the river was not flowing as per usual, and he thinks that's strange. Who in the world would be able to stop the flow of the Ganga? And he sees there's a boy, about 16, young, full of audacious arrogance. And with his arrows, he's made a dam that stops the flow of the river Ganga. And he's looking and says, "Who are you? What are you doing? What's happening?" And this boy says, "Look, I can stop the flow of the river with my arrows, but I can also make it flow again." So he makes this dam, he breaks it down, he's showing all of his prowess. And finally, Ganga Devi in her personified form arrives and says, "O Maharaj Shantanu, this is none other than your son. His name is Devavrat. He's been taught everything. by all of the gods. He's been taught political policy from Brihaspati. He's learned all of these things from Vashishta Muni. Like it's like big, big names in learning, right? All of these sages who have been the teachers of Lord Ram, who have been the teachers of great demons and great kings, who have been the teachers of Indradev himself. These were the teachers of Devavrat. She says here, he is a most competent prince, ready to be ruler of your dynasty. Take him with you. And Shantanu hopefully says, but have you come back? She says, no, still going. And she goes. But now he has his son. And so Maharaj Shantanu is quite happy. But not too long after that, he is once again by many, many rivers. He enjoys hunting. And he's assailed by a fragrance. This fragrance happens to belong to a young woman who has a boat. And with her boat, she ferries people across the river back and forth. And so he sees her. He says, "Oh, my dear maiden, who are you? And can you ferry me across the river?" She says, "Of course I can. My name is Satyavati, and I am the daughter of the Fisher King." And so she ferries him across the river. And many sources say that he spends that whole afternoon being ferried back and forth across the river just to be able to have a conversation with her. Finally, he says, "I'm so captivated. I have to somehow have you as a wife." She says, "Well, you have to speak to my father." They go to the Fisher King, and Maharaja Shantanu is thinking, I'm the emperor of this entire province. Anybody would be happy to have their daughter affiliated with me. Goes to the Fisher King. The Fisher King says, "Oh, Maharaj, I'm delighted. We just have a condition, right? These royal families and their conditions." He says, "We just have a condition. Well, we were foretold of a prophecy that Satyavati's children would be king. It seems that you already have a crown prince, but we'd need you to forego that one and give us a promise that Satyavati's children would be king." Maharaj Shantanu is crestfallen, completely depressed. He says, "I can't do it." He goes back home. As he is so crestfallen and depressed, he goes back home, and immediately Devavrata, who's attuned to his father's moods, sees his father in a way that he's never seen him before. He won't speak, he won't eat. I can't get him to tell me what's wrong. So finally he goes to the charioteer and he says, "You can tell me. You are my father's trusted companion. You tell me what's wrong." He relays the entire situation. Devavrata now goes to speak to this Satyavati. And he says, "Oh, mother, I can't understand why anyone would give up the advances of my father. He's a wonderful person." She says, it wasn't me. It was my father." Devavrata goes and speaks to the Fisher King, and he speaks to Satyavati. He hears the conditions, and he says, "So be it. I'm not greedy for the kingdom. Fine. Let her children become king." The Fisher King says, "This isn't enough. I've seen enough about the ways of political people and the ways of the royalty to know that they are not going to give up their claims without a fight. So you might say it's fine, but what if you have children and those children lay claim to the throne?" I mean, he brings up various examples. Just look at Lord Ram's family. We have different claims to the throne. Lord Ram was sent into banishment. So many things happened. How can I be assured that I know you'll keep to your word, but your family, what about them? Devavrata says, "Fine. If this is what you require, for the sake of my father's happiness, I now make a vow. I won't get married. I won't have children. I will live a life of complete asceticism. I'll be a brahmachari for the rest of my life." And at that moment, the skies open up, flowers rain down, there are thunderclaps, and from the sky there is heard the name Bhishma, which means one of a terrible vow. Which, interestingly enough, uh, brahmacharya for a lifelong person, that was considered a terrible vow in Vedic culture. How how interesting is that? Now, some of us might know lifelong brahmacharis. That was a terrible vow. Back then, the gods, celestials, all of the above were thinking to live this life alone. It's intense. It's not easy. So Bhishma takes this vow, and now he's known as Bhishma. Shantanu arrives on the scene and says, "What have you done?" "Whatever I've done has been for your happiness. That is the most important thing to me." Shantanu says, "Well, then, along with this vow, I give you a boon. You can choose the time at which you leave your body. No one has control over your death except you. They can try and incapacitate you with weapons, they can do whatever they want. Only you will be able to choose when you die." And so this is our Bhishma. Bhishma dedicates himself to furthering the dynasty of the Kurus. He dedicates himself to becoming a protector of the throne of the Kurus. This becomes his penance. It also becomes like a ball and chain. Uh, and as a result, he finds himself in a position where very many times he is the steward of the throne. So Satyavati does have children. And then Shantanu dies. And these two children have problems. One child is named Chitrangad. Chitrangad has the same name, happens to have the same name as a celestial Gandharva. These Gandharvas are usually peace-loving musicians, but this Gandharva, Chitrangad, was offended. "A mortal with my name? Do you really deserve it?" So he comes, he challenges this Chitrangad, the prince, to a fight. Chitrangad, being a Kshatriya, a warrior, who never backs down from a fight, says, "So be it." They fight to the death, and Chitrangad, the prince, dies. He was not worthy of the name. So now Satyavati has one other son, Vichitravirya. And she needs to get this son married because the other son died without marriage and without a son, and now the throne is in peril. Right? So these prophecies sometimes don't give us the full picture. You get a prophecy, her children will be king, and now they're king, but now we're also in a fix. So Bhishma goes to the celebrated kingdom of Kashi, where there are three princesses: Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. Bhishma, trying to do the right thing, says, "O king of Kashi, usually the princesses of Kashi are readily given to the kings of the Kuru dynasty. Like they have a long line of affiliation between them. But now I see that you've organized a Swayamvara, a choosing ceremony for your daughters. What happened to our traditions?" The king of Kashi says, "Well, there were a lot of princes. I kind of wanted to see our options." Bhishma says, "Fine. I will kidnap them for my brother Vichitravirya. And if there are any princes who can do battle with me, so be it. There are a lot of princes. None of them are able to stand up to even the twanging of Bhishma's bow." This is the very same Bhishma who was taught everything by the celestials. He learned weaponry and warfare and archery from Parshuram. Parshuram is an incarnation of our Lord, very angry. But what do you do with someone who's learned weaponry from the weapon master themselves? So Bhishma defeats everyone easily. And he takes the three princesses. And he makes his way back to Hastinapur, which, if we have gotten to know anything about Bhagavad Gita, Hastinapur plays a very pivotal role within this entire Bhagavad Gita. So, Bhishma makes his way back to Hastinapur, and one of the princesses, Amba, speaks up. Excuse me. Hi. Uh, this is all well and good, but I had already chosen a match for myself. And now you've kidnapped me, effectively, and I don't want to be here. Bhishma says, you should have spoken up before. I would have let you go. I, Bhishma has no claim. I don't need three princesses. My brother doesn't even need three princesses. I mean, does anybody else have an issue? Everybody else is fine. But Amba has an issue. She had chosen Shalva, which is a king from a neighboring province, as her beloved. They had looked at each other, formed an attraction, and so Bhishma says, well, go find him. Be happy. She goes off. She meets Shalva, and Shalva says, I don't want it. But we were in love. He says, yeah, but that was before you were stolen by Bhishma. And I fought him, and I lost. So now I can't take charity from the same person who just defeated me. Not only that, but Bhishma took you by your right hand, put you on the chariot. That's the only person that can have you. Sorry. And in effect, he says, I cannot look at you as anything other than a sister. Ooh. That. If you've ever had a crush on someone and thought that they returned your affections only to hear that they now look at you like a sibling, Amba's quite upset. Amba goes back to Bhishma and she says, you need to make this right. She says, I tried to make it right. I let you go. I have no more claims on this. She says, nope, the only way you can make it right is by marrying me. He says, I can't marry you. Satyavati says, Bhishma, maybe you should marry her. He says, this is ridiculous. I took the vow for you. And now you want me to break the vow that I took for you? Impossible. Can't do it. Amba goes to the forest. She does penance. She meets her grandfather. Her grandfather says, I know somebody who can help you. He takes her to Parshuram. She says, Parshuram, you should speak to your disciple. Parshuram challenges Bhishma to a fight. They fight almost to the end of the world. Lord Shiva himself has to appear. This is a very, abridged version, right? So Lord Shiva has to appear and he says, stop! Everybody stop. Listen, you guys are going to destroy the world and that's my job and it's not time. I'm going to need everybody to calm down. You all figure out a situation between you two that does not involve fighting to the death or to the end of the world. Parshuram says, fine, I agree that you've defeated me. But Bhishma says, whoa, but you're my guru. I can't do it. I'll stop fighting first. And so Parshuram says, but because you are my beloved disciple, I can't do anything but give you blessings. You've given me such an exciting fight. This is warriors, right? They were just fighting to the death or to the end of the world, but also enjoying the whole fight, right? You've served me so nicely by fighting with me. I can't curse you. Turns to Amba. Sorry, got nothing for you. Amba is upset. Amba goes and she does penance to many people. She meets, finally, Skanda, the great commander of the gods, the son of Lord Shiva, right? Kartikeya, who's also very dear to this month of Kartik. So Kartikeya, he gives her a garland of lotuses, and he says, whoever wears this garland will become the death of Bhishma. She's now happy. She takes the garland all over the world, and no one wants to fight with Bhishma. He's a pretty good guy. Also, he's defeated a lot of people. No one wants to have an issue with him. She goes to the kingdom of Kampilia. within the realm of Panchal Desh, which is very important. And the king there is uh, Drupad. She meets with Drupad and she says, "Look, I have a garland. It'll be assured. It's really not a problem if you just right. Anybody who wears the garland will be the death of Bhishma." He's like, "I don't have a problem with Bhishma. No one should have a problem with Bhishma. He's a good guy. Like we heard, like we hear of his parentage. He's the son of Ganga. Like why would I want to have a problem with him?" In anger, she gets upset and throws the garland around a pillar. And she says, "That's it. I'll do it myself." She leaves the garland there and storms out. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this garland?" He appoints guards to watch the garland around the pillar. Make sure nobody touches it. Don't anybody put it on. Just leave it where it is. Amba goes back to the forest to do more penance. She does penance. Finally, she meets with Lord Shiva. She says, "Oh, great Mahadev, I need help. I need to kill Bhishma." He says, "Well, you had the garland. You had a whole thing. Like I can't do anything for you this lifetime, but I promise you, in the next lifetime, you'll be able to defeat Bhishma." She says, "But I don't want to wait that long. Like, what if I forget? You know, people from one lifetime to the next, they're prone to forgetfulness. I don't want to forget." He says, "It's okay. Your vengeance will be so strong that you won't forget it." She's perfect. Lord Shiva leaves, and then she decides to expedite the process. She builds a fire and jumps into it. She was intense, really intense. She takes birth as the daughter of King Drupad. This daughter is named Shikandi. Drupad looks at the daughter and raises her like a son. Drupad wants a son, so he starts to raise his daughter as a son. This daughter walks into the assembly hall one day, walks up to the pillar as a child. Somehow guard number 6 was not doing his job. She takes the garland now and puts it around herself. Drupad's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? All the guards, what? No one was watching the child?" Just don't worry. This was all fated. All to be foretold. Don't worry. Leave the rest to me. It's okay. I got it. He continues to raise this daughter as a son. Everybody else in the kingdom has already decided that Drupad has a son. Drupad's family, they have a whole revenge issue. Like they have a vengeance thing. Drupad later gets into a feud with a sage and then has a whole sacrifice to try and get more children for vengeance purposes. Right? He wants a son who's going to kill that sage, but then he also wants a daughter because he happens to be impressed by a warrior who goes by the name of Arjuna, which, if we've heard anything about Bhagavad Gita, is our hero. So he wants 2 children, like a little bit vengeance, a little bit like, I'm like, don't you already have one child out for vengeance? But it's okay. Like, but the vengeance is going to cross lifetimes. So he does have 2 children. One named Drishtadyumna and the other named Draupadi. This Draupadi does happen to marry Arjuna. She also happens to marry all of the other 5 Pandavas. But now we have this still Shikandi, who's out for vengeance and never has forgotten her hatred for Bhishma. In the course of time, there is a big, big war, which is where our Bhagavad Gita factors in, which I always thought was very interesting, that Bhagavad Gita is one of the first things that we read. It's in the middle of a huge story, right? And if we have no backstory, it kind of seems a little bit like, but why? Why are we all fighting each other? And why does Arjuna care so much? Arjuna's looking across and he's thinking, I grew up with these people. I was taught archery by these people. There is Bhishma, one of the greatest warriors of my entire time, of anybody's time. And he's looking at Krishna. You want me to do what? Kill them all. You want me to kill them all. Bhishma, who sat me on his lap when I was a child. Bhishma, who I ran to whenever I had problems as a child. Whenever the Duryodhana and his brothers were mean to me, I ran to Bhishma. He would sit me on his lap. He would pat me on my head. He would hold me close. He would embrace me. He would teach me everything I know about being a good person. And you want me to kill him, the person I call grandfather. Now, if we know anything about families and chosen families at that, we have those people who are outside of our families who we call uncle, aunt, grandpa, right? Sometimes those bonds are even more dear than the people we're related to. Now, never mind the fact that Arjuna is actually related, but he's also his chosen grandfather. He's taught me everything I know, and you want me to what? You are the husband of the goddess of fortune. You own victory. You are victory and adventure, and you want me to do the most abominable thing that I can think of? How? Why? I'd much rather just go to the forest and live a life of asceticism. I can't do this. Suddenly, Arjuna's breakdown has some weight to it, doesn't it? Looking at his uncles, looking at his teachers, looking like, can you imagine? Can you imagine the people that you've served with, the people that you've taken direction from, the people that you've run to whenever you have a problem? Now you specifically have to cause them pain. Krishna says, look, I could tell you the whole workings of the universe. I could break down how karma works. None of that is really going to make you feel better. I'll do it, and he does do it. Like, it's not going to make you feel better, but I'll explain how everything goes. Really, at the end of the day, what you should know is you're my friend, and all of this is already happening. I could make it happen by time. I could take care of it myself. In fact, I have. I've already taken care of it. But you could help. You could be my right-hand guy. Wisely, Arjuna decides to be that right-hand person. But Bhishma's a problem. Bhishma is single-handedly taking out hundreds of thousands of people every day. When we say general, he is a general. He's good at what he does. He is incapacitating people left and right, breaking through phalanxes. No one can do anything about Bhishma except Arjuna. And Arjuna can only do something about Bhishma because Krishna is there. And Krishna is king of the loophole. Krishna says, well, we can do away with Bhishma. Whenever you're ready, just, let me know. Whenever we're ready. And we have a secret weapon. We have the great fighter, Shikandi. Shikandi's just kind of been laying in wait, learning battle formations, etc. And Shikandi is there. And now Shikandi has made a deal with a yaksha. Shikandi, who was formerly a woman raised as a man, goes to the yaksha. They have a deal. She takes the yaksha's manhood, and then she becomes a man. It's a whole change. And somehow nobody cares. Which, I've had conversations with my sister, my family, and my Sunday school class of girls. And I'm like, funny that we're making a big deal about a lot of things right now. And somehow, Vedic culture, Shikandi does this whole thing, and no one cares. It's like, okay, so that happened. Fine. Maybe we should care less. Go figure. So, Shikandi now, completely now, has the manhood. But Bhishma says, it's kind of a code that I have, right? I won't fight a woman. And they're like, but it's not a woman. Used to be. And they're like, but by that theory, anybody could have used to have been a woman. It's like, but I know it happened. So I refuse. So Krishna's like, at any moment, you let me know when we're ready. All we have to do is bring out Shikandi. And Arjuna is saying, but Shikandi's nowhere near as great of an archer as I am. He says, I know. Shikandi will be the shield. Shikandi shoots arrows from in front of Arjuna, and that gets Bhishma to put down his bow. Like, I'm not going to fight. I'm going to put down the weapons. You guys do whatever you have to do. And it is at that time that Arjuna has to have the heartbreaking task of incapacitating Bhishma. Bhishma is shot through with so many of Arjuna's arrows. And he's happy. He's pleased. For a warrior, there's no greater end. But also, he loves Arjuna. To me, it's like when you fight with the kids and you let the kids win and it's okay. So this is what it is for Bhishma. And everyone is crying. It's a really heart-wrenching scene. Arjuna's crying. All the other Pandavas are crying. Duryodhana's crying. Everybody's crying. Everybody had such a great respect for Bhishma. From the first few verses of Bhagavad Gita, you wouldn't realize it because Duryodhana has a very strange way of showing his respect for people. In essence, what he says is, my army is led by Bhishma. Now all of you have to go give support to the old man. Like, what? But he respects him in his own way. It's really interesting, Duryodhana. But, so, from the first few verses, it kind of seems iffy, but he respects him. Everybody's upset. Everyone wants to come and make Bhishma comfortable, knowing that you can only incapacitate him. You can't kill him because his boon from the beginning of our story, he can choose the time of his passing. So Bhishma says no. The only person that will make me comfortable is Arjuna. Arjuna, you put me in this position. You make me comfortable. He gives him a bed of arrows. They want to bring pillows. He says, no, I want a warrior's comfort. And so he's now laying on a bed of arrows, which I can only think of as extremely uncomfortable. Like, nothing about this seems comfortable. It's like pin cushion. It's not great. But this is what he wants for himself. This is the strength of the asceticism of Bhishma's character. And he says, I'm thirsty. And so Arjuna shoots arrows into the ground and springs forth water just from the ground with the use of his arrows. And everyone comes to take guidance from Bhishma still, because there's still a war. But at the end of that war, Yudhishthir is crestfallen. The number is somewhere near 600 million casualties. My mind can't conceive of a number like that. That is so many people. 600 million casualties, and Yudhishthir is thinking, this is all on me. I'm emperor. All of this so that I could be king. He is depressed. He is on the verge of complete madness. He can't cope with that many deaths being his responsibility. In a lecture, Srila Prabhupada had quoted a different number one time. I think it was somewhere near 6 million or something. And someone said, oh, but Srila Prabhupada, you wrote that it was 600 million. Srila Prabhupada said, did I? He said, yes. Srila Prabhupada said, it was a big number. Which, yeah, it was a big number. Really big. Whether it's 6 million or 600 million, our minds can't conceive of that many deaths. And now this one person. It's like, and I have to rule? There are widows and orphans, and what do I do with all of this? And they say that Krishna could have counseled him, and he did. But for the sake of this pastime, Yudhishthira is not consoled at all. I hear what you're saying, Krishna, but I can't. He says, fine. Krishna says, let's go to the one person who will be able to help you. They all go to Bhishma. Bhishma was waiting for this exact moment. Bhishma had sat, laid on that bed of arrows for such a long time. I'm gonna wait. Some say he was waiting for Uttarayana, which is a sign when the sun passes into the eastern hemisphere with the horizon and the stuff. But also, Uttarayana means that person who's just emerged on the horizon of Uttara. It's a very long story, but Uttara is a princess, Arjuna's daughter-in-law. So Arjuna had a son, and that son had a wife. This wife is Uttara. And so Uttara has the last remaining heir of the entire Kuru dynasty. I know we're like going way over time, but stay with me for a second. Last remaining heir of the entire Kuru dynasty, and she's pregnant with him. That's all we got. All of our hopes pinned on this one child. And somebody decides, you know what? We got to take him out. And unleashes the equivalent of an atomic bomb, like an atomic missile, with superhuman, like, precision, right? So this atomic bomb, what they say is when that, it's a Brahmastra, but when it goes off, the earth becomes barren, nothing will grow, ancestors won't even, like, nothing goes to that place. But it also has the precision of being able to kill a child within the womb, technically without harming the mother. But I think the psychological effects are harm enough, isn't it? Like, so has the precision to harm the child within the womb without harming the mother if it's wielded properly. This person unleashes it on the child in the womb. Krishna, well, because she runs to Krishna and she says, help! There's an issue. Krishna at this point had promised not to fight during the battle of Kurukshetra, this huge Bhagavad Gita war battle. He promised not fighting, no weapons. He almost breaks that promise one time in order to do battle with Bhishma, which we could have several hours of conversation about Bhishma, but this is how amazing Bhishma is. Almost breaks that one time. Bhishma is so chivalrous. He's so undefeatable on this battlefield that Bhishma has decided, I'm going to take out the Pandavas one by one, starting with Arjuna, and I'm going to succeed. Either I will succeed or Krishna will break his vow. Let's see. Let's see which one is more powerful. My vow or his vow. Bhishma goes, does battle. He is shooting arrows at Arjuna left and right, and then Krishna is a charioteer, which means some of those arrows are hitting him. You ever have a friend that's like, I would take a bullet for you? Krishna is literally this friend in this moment, taking arrows for the sake of Arjuna. Finally, says Arjuna, now's the time. You should kill him. You promised me you would. And Arjuna's like, I know, but I can't figure this out. Like, I cannot wrap my mind around this. I know we had a whole powwow before this whole thing started. And I know you told me who you are. And I know you're God. But this is not working in real life, in practical application. Have we ever been there? Right? Krishna, I know you're in charge. I know you said you got this. But in the real life practical application, I'm having a breakdown. This is not making sense to me. This is Arjuna. Krishna gets angry. And in one hand, he holds a whip for the horses. In another hand, he's holding the reins of the horses. And finally, he says, enough. You promised, and you're not doing the things. And so he throws down the whip, throws down the reins, gets off the chariot, and comes marching, rampaging towards Bhishma. All the while, angrily speaking to him. This is all your fault. This battle would not have been a battle had you not actually gone and had a family. Whoa. I was trying to do the best thing. He's like, but in doing the best thing, you did nothing. Like, if you'd have taken one decision, you could have done away with this entire thing. None of us would have been in this entire situation were it not for you. Krishna's incredibly angry. Finding no weapons, he picks up a broken chariot wheel and is ready to hurl it at Bhishma. Bhishma, this is exactly what he wanted. Yes, please. This is the vision that he wanted. He's like, this is the best moment of my life. See, I brought it back to the title of the lecture. Best moments of our lives. This is what he's wanted all along. Eventually, Arjuna has to go and almost tackle Krishna by the waist. Wait, stop! You promised. You said you weren't going to fight. You weren't going to pick up any weapons. You can't break your promise for me. Like hell I can. No, don't. I'll do the needful. I'll fight with everything I've got. Just put down the wheel. Once again, this Uttara says, help! Technically, the battle was not over. Krishna should not have picked up any weapons. But Bhagavatam says, one of my favorite things, Krishna was more concerned with protecting his family and his friends than being a societal moralist and upholding a vow for the sake of society. Krishna is more concerned with being our friend and protecting us than he is with upholding any of the other rules of the universe. So our friend does the only thing he can. He enters into the womb of Uttara, stops this Brahmastra with his club and with his Sudarshan Chakra, and saves the child in the womb. Now, later on in Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear that that child had already been vanquished. He had to go and give the soul a new body in the womb. This is Krishna, because I can't even. What? Enters in, saves the child. Whoops, child's already gone. No problem. He can generate a whole new body just for the child right then. And then he disappears. But that child had a glimpse of this amazing person who had saved his existence before it was an existence. That one glimpse was enough. When that child is born, he's constantly examining every person he sees to see, are you that person that saved me? And anybody? So because that child is constantly examining, they name this child the examiner. They name him Parikshit, which means the examiner, one who's constantly looking for something. So this Uttarayana, right, getting back to the Uttarayana is the one who has just emerged from the horizon of Uttara. So they say this Uttarayana is a constellation, Earth and the sun and the hemispheres. But really, what Bhishma was waiting for was that person who had just saved Uttara. He was waiting for Krishna. And Krishna, being the merciful person that he is, arrives on the scene. Not just so that Yudhishthira can be consoled, but so that he can appear before his very own devotee. Now we think, you guys were just fighting. You were just really mad at him. Like, you said some things. Like, but still? Yes, still. This is our Krishna. And Bhishma says in his prayers, which I do think, if we have the opportunity, go to the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Please go to chapter 9 and read the beautiful prayers of Bhishma for these next 5 days. Just read a couple. Bhishma speaks about a great many things. He says, this is the same person who appeared before me on the battlefield knowing that the best service that I would have wanted to give with my whole heart would have been to engage in battle with him. And so he mercifully appeared before me. And he took my arrows on his very own body. He describes him as decorated with the dust from the horse's hooves in his hair, and with scarlet wounds decorating his form, This is the poetry of a lifelong warrior. And he says, this is the same person that appeared before me. He says, in the Rajasuya sacrifice, where Yudhishthir was named emperor, this same Krishna was worshipped as the personality of Godhead. He says, because that moment happened in my presence, I hold it dear to my heart, and I use it to keep my mind worshiping this Krishna for all of my days. These are the best moments of Bhishma's life. So then we're like, okay, fine, like, but what are the best moments of our lives? Have we been keeping our eyes peeled for them? For Bhishma, he says, just that one moment where Krishna was worshipped by everyone in attendance. It's one of the best moments of my life, and I keep it to hold myself together when times get rough. Have we been remembering those moments where our dearmost friend was worshipped? Those few moments where maybe we were in that assembly of people worshiping Krishna. Those are the best moments of our lives. Moments that we can hold in our minds to keep us together when times get rough. Because they're going to get rough. It's a material world side effect. Unfortunately, things are going to happen. But we have the best moments of our lives. These are the best moments of our lives. Where we can remember, oh, my friend said a thing that really struck me when she went like 15 minutes over the time allotted for the lecture. But she said one thing, and that helps me. I read one thing one time where Krishna said something so amazing, and just that one line holds me together when times get rough. I remember I was about 16 or 18, and I was kind of reading Bhagavatam, and our Vaishnava Acaryas get really esoteric. They get really deep with the poetry of Bhishma, and when Bhishma says he was taking those arrows of mine like a shower of flower petals, or like the service of his near and dear ones, our Acaryas go deeper. And our teachers then say that Krishna was accepting the stings of the arrows as no more than he would accept the amorous bites of a lover or of a fiance. And I remember at 16 or 18 going, whoa, what? Okay. My Lord is doing some things. And this is relatable. Relatable if you are ever a person who has had a romantic notion about love. Relatable if you've ever thought, but what if I don't see myself in a female form yet? Like, what does my service look like? Would Krishna accept it? And even if he accepted it, would it be on the same level of accepting the service of those that are the most intimately connected with him? Our friend says, absolutely. Our friend is so magnificent, so multifaceted, so inconceivable that he can accept the service of anyone, even a warrior, on the battlefield as the most intimate service. Because he knows this is the most intimate service that they could ever render to me. Our service doesn't have to look like somebody else's. And in fact, Bhishma, when he sees Krishna on this bed of arrows, at the moment of his death, he says, now I turn my mind to those gopi residents of Braj. Those simple-hearted gopis of Vrindavan who loved Krishna with all that they are. I now turn my mind there. I fix my mind on them. Because if I could just develop a love like that, everything would be perfect. But this is our friend who says, no matter what your life looked like, no matter if your service looked like the gopis or didn't look like the gopis, you rendered service with a heart full of devotion. And so he makes the executive decision to appear before Bhishma at the time of his death. Not only does he appear before Bhishma, but he says, you become qualified to teach everybody. He pays his own respects to Bhishma. Where do we see that? How is this possible? That the Lord of the universe, the Lord of our very own hearts, now pays his respects to his very own devotee. All because Bhishma rendered his service to the best of his ability, with his whole heart full of devotion, even if it looked like being a politician, even if it looked like being a steward of the throne dripping in jewels, even if it looked like not giving up everything and going to the forest, even when it looked like going against Krishna, having to side with the other party. He did his service with a heart full of devotion, even when nobody else understood him, even when it looked like Krishna didn't understand. Our best friend will always understand. So even if our service doesn't look like everybody else's, these are the best moments of our lives. And better not to cheat a cheater. No matter what we do, even if we think, I am not up to the standard of so many other saints, cool. Whatever you do, fill it with devotion, and it becomes the best moment of our life. Thank you so much for bearing with me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to have the best moments of my life.
Thank you, Chuka Gopi, very much. What a wonderful class. What a relatable class. Bhima Prabhu is appreciating how you said that Krishna is a king of loopholes. He's wondering if you have Sanskrit for this.
Oh, I wish. I have to go and find it, but I'm sure there is. Because, with the unlimited names that he has, I am sure there is the one besides the stealer of the heart that means that he will find every loophole. I'm going to figure it out. Now that you've asked, I got to go figure it out now.
What about the societal moralist? Sanskrit for that?
Yeah, I got to go find it. It's right there. Like, it in these, the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam are just,
Cool. All right, devotees, do we have any questions, reflections, comments? Andrew, Viveshwari, Raphael?
I am.
Anybody?
Hare Krishna. I wanted to say thank you so much. Your storytelling is very. I feel like the little kid, so excited to listen again, and it feels good to have that feeling again, especially with Krishna's story. So thank you. And it's funny how you mentioned the change of sex in women and how it can be disturbing to some. And at first, for me, it was, I used to think that's not in their nature, that, and I used to judge. So, I'm guilty of it. And, you brought that how Bhishma it seemed that he was an enemy of, Krishna or Arjuna. We, in the external, we may see it as something, but in reality, it could be a way of elevating.
Yeah.
So
there are so many. I feel like there are so many stories where you look and you go, that's the bad guy. That guy's the bad guy. And then Bhagavatam and Vedic culture and all of our Vaishnava acharyas go, actually, not exactly the bad guy. And you're like, well, who is the bad guy? And that's Krishna's point. He's like, no one. Like, everyone follows my path. in all respects. It's like it's just as they approach me, I reciprocate,
Mm-hmm.
which is really really crazy to me, especially in this world of all kinds of things happening. You're like, you mean to tell me that that guy is not the bad guy, the guy who did like we see he did all the things like right, but in there is a soul who's been going through body after body after body, and ultimately the original identity of that soul, not the bad guy. But just let me judge people. Just let me judge.
Yeah. So thank you for that realization. Because sometimes I forget. And the reminder of the memories of worshiping our dear Krishna, and when we have our, you know, celebrations, those are good samaskaras to remember in
Mm-hmm.
times of hardships or times of when we're not able to make it in person. Um, you can relive it and to some extent. So thank you so much. I needed it. Hare Krishna.
I feel like Shardia always
Questions?
has a question. Shardia always has a question. I don't know why she doesn't just give in. Give in.
Shardia. Oh,
See?
I. Right.
Hare Krishna, dear Jita Gopi. I first want to wait for everyone else to have a chance to ask a question.
You should
But I
never
do
do that.
have a couple of questions. Um, so my one question is related to, Bhishmadev's decisions that he makes. Because, as you said, like Krishna points out to him, like if he had just like decided to give up his vow, in one sense, he could have prevented the whole battle. But even earlier on, like it's. I mean, I don't want to judge because he's such a great personality, but for me, it's always strange that his father gets infatuated with a woman, and then he like puts the whole kingdom at risk, to kind of to accommodate his father's infatuation. And I always found that strange. Like it's not like that. Like he takes a great vow, to be like brahmachari for life. But the reason he does it, I can't really understand, and that feels like it's from there that you get like things go seriously wrong, because that's he makes
Well,
that decision and then he does it with the son. So is it like, did he make that decision, or was it like, is it kind of like the pastime needs to happen, so therefore he makes that decision? Like, how do we understand, like, why does he make that decision?
mm-hmm.
Because he's such a great personality.
Yeah, well, funny, so like external, right? All the housekeeping type things. That one Vasu, uh, he got cursed with a very long life. And that Vasu says, he's like, but before I go, somebody needs to promise me that I won't get so entangled in this material world stuff. And you know what does that? Families. He's like, so I don't want a family. And I'm like, you don't want a family? He's like, no, I don't want to have children. I don't want to have a wife. I don't want to have anything that's going to bind me up further than I already have to be bound up because I already got to live long. They say, okay. So externally, it's kind of like a last life thing. He's going to make the decision anyhow. It's going to come to pass that he's not going to have a family because it was a desire from a last life, which, you know, this whole Mahabharata just goes to show us how the previous lives will influence these ones so much, incredibly, which just kind of like goes to show that we have to kind of look at people on a spectrum of lives, right? We come in the middle of a karmic conversation looking at like one life, 1 year, 5 minutes, one situation. And these people are living out a whole trajectory of karma, which is not to say that we should say that to somebody when they're grieving. Doesn't work. But we should know that for ourselves when like it comes upon us, because the urge is gonna like bubble up like, oh my god, how could you. We kind of have to like stop ourselves with that. There's a whole trajectory that I am not seeing of this person's existence. On the inside, we do things for the people we love. Like, none of us have made a lifelong promise to somebody we love. Anybody ever got initiated? Anybody else think about making a lifelong promise for the people that we love? So, he makes a lifelong promise for somebody that he loves. His father, he loves his father the most. He loves his parent. And it's not like Shantanu was just kind of like going around collecting women, right? We can kind of put it in a box, like he just had an infatuation with another lady. I was like, yeah, but the other infatuation was like 16 years ago. Like, he wasn't just walking around infatuated with people. Like, we can break it down to something very black and white, but really, it's filled with color. Let's think about lives and personalities and psychologies of people. When you see somebody and you feel like they're a soulmate, and you're willing to do anything for that connection, one, it's a very natural thing that happens. And two, like, I mean, it's intense, it's strong. So sometimes we'll see it, and we can see it now. We see it now all the time, where sometimes kids will put up with a whole bunch of things because their parent is in love with somebody. They're like, I'm willing to do this because this is my parent. Ram went to the forest to uphold stuff for his parents. Right? We can think about all the things that we'll do for our parents. And if we do all the things that we can do for our parents and then our parents still tell us we're not good enough, it leads to a lot of childhood trauma and the new term reparenting. So now people have to like reparent themselves and try and figure out all of this trauma from the relationship that they had with their parents. I love Vedic culture because it's not new. 5,000 years ago. This is like end of a previous yuga. None of this stuff that we're dealing with is new. And, Krishna says like from Brahmaloka all the way down to the end of the universe, all are places filled with like misery and anxiety. Which is not to say, I mean, it is kind of to say like it's going to be miserable, sorry, but not just to say that it's going to be miserable. Right? My Krishna, he's not just a Debbie Downer. Like, he's not just being like, sorry, and your life's going to be miserable. Got nothing. I feel like this is to say the anxiety is normal. The issues where your mind comes for you, it's normal. What he's telling you is everybody's going through it. Even up to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma's mind is getting the best of him. So it's not even to say like, and who are we? So I know it's going to happen to me. That's all beside the point. It's normal. Don't think that this freak out is only happening to you. It's a material world thing. Good news is the material world is not all there is. There's a way out. There's an exit clause. And I really like that Krishna does this thing again and again and again within Bhagavad Gita. It's like hard truths, really, really, really inconceivable things. And then he breaks it down to just the smallest. He's like, or you could just be my friend. And that's the supreme exit clause. Like, you could go to the forest. You could meditate with your spine in a straight line and every single one of your chakras aligned. And you could like breathe in through one nostril and exhale through the other nostril and keep your gaze focused on all the things. Or, because that's really hard. Or, you could just be my friend. And I'll take care of it. Time and time again. And every time I read Bhagavad Gita, and every time I get to a point and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, God. I know that at the end of that chapter, just when my mind feels like it's going to overheat, like when my brain's like, we are going to force quit, the whole application is done. You need an upgrade. I know Krishna's going to say, or you could just be my friend. So many times. Arjuna questions. He's like, Okay, you mentioned like these whole divine and demoniac natures. What's the deal with that? And I love it how Krishna, he sees the freak out and he's like, well, here's the demoniac natures, here's the divine natures. But he also tells him, like, even before the end of the chapter, he's like, you don't have to worry about it, Arjuna. You've already come built in with the divine natures. Don't worry about it. Like all the stuff and the fancy words, it's like, don't worry about it. You could be my friend. Over and above all the stuff. So yeah, why? Why would anybody go and make lifelong promises to the people that they love? That's the short answer. The short and the long answer is we all do it. Whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, whether it's a teacher, at some point we think, you know what, I could make a lifelong promise for this person. And who of us is in charge of the entire future except for Krishna? And Bhishma knows. And Bhishma is really smart. So in some ways he does know that this is all gonna go really badly. But also Krishna says, I got a lot of people to take care of. So there's a lot of souls that have to be relocated and liberated. So 600 million. Whew. That was one battle. That's not counting all the other times that Krishna fought things, people, and liberated them. I'm looking at like the 18 battles of Jarasandha right now. Because every time he came with hundreds of thousands of people. And they all needed to be relocated. I know. I was also thinking, like, what is the Sanskrit for, like, Debbie Downer? As I said it, I was like, do we have a... No. He wasn't being a negative Narayan, though. See what happened? He was really trying to help Arjuna and all of us, because how many times we're like, I'm the only one going through this, nobody else is going through this, there's all these demigods with celestial powers, and if I just had a fraction of their powers, I think everything would be better. And now we have Lord Brahma saying, he's like, you know what? In the pages of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and I loved this section, Lord Brahma says, even I'm in anxiety. Like, my planet has to go, and I'm in anxiety thinking about when it's going to happen. This is the generator of the worlds. He's in anxiety about the end of his time. So if we're thinking about the end of our time and we're in anxiety about it, it's normal. If we're going to take a promise for somebody that we love and it might go really badly, it's normal. Whatever it is that you're going through, Srimad Bhagavatam says, oh wait, been there, done that. There is nothing. And I mean that, and I told that to my Sunday school girls. I was like, there's nothing that Krishna won't understand. He's been there, he's done that. He's probably helped a lot of people through it. There's nothing that you're going to go through that he won't understand. So if somebody tells you, listen, God is never going to understand this decision you're about to make, they're lying. Sorry. Because my unlimited view, Lord, the one they call Ananta, whose name means unlimited and Achintya, inconceivable, there's nothing that you mean to tell me me, one little jiva, is going to go through something more inconceivable than the inconceivable can conceive of? No. It's in his name. He made a name for it. So now he has to live up to it. There is nothing that you're going to go through that he won't understand. And usually, it's when we have the views, right, that say, yeah, but Bhishma, I don't get it. I don't know how in the world he could have ever done something like that. Material nature. Who is a person? She says, oh, really? Okay, watch. Just watch. So I kind of feel like it's real iffy territory the moment we get to that place where we're like, yeah, but no. If I would have material nature says, oh, watch. Let's put them in a situation where we see what they would have done. It'll be great. Let's just see it play out. So that wonderful holder and wielder of that trident, she's really, her aim is amazing. It's amazing. You know, my Guru Maharaj says Krishna will trouble you, and it's not trouble unless it's troubling. Right? So we, like, the moment we're like, hey, that was a test, I just dodged it. See how advanced I'm getting? Our inconceivable and unlimited Lord says, oh wait, we got to find a new way to keep the attention, you know, because he's going to keep the relationship fresh. I don't know why, but he's going to keep the relationship fresh lest we get bored and decide to focus on something other than him again, because we've done that. So never mind, I do know why. So he's going to keep the relationship fresh. So now he's going to say, okay, guys, let's have a powwow. Let's find a new way. Let's find a way in which we haven't tested them yet. Because material world. So in understanding the psychology of why Bhishma would do something like that for somebody he loved, we also have to kind of be careful about being like, you know, like, I just don't, you know, I get it. You'd love somebody that much, and then all of our universal forms conspire together to say, yes, let's show you how. I think it's a way of getting our hearts to be softer and more compassionate, because Krishna loves soft, buttery hearts. It's not very comfortable. But neither is churning butter. Also not comfortable. Neither is making sandalwood paste, which Krishna loves. Not comfortable. Making gold is not a comfortable process. Plants, not comfortable. They have to, like, be packed down with pounds of pressure. Nothing is comfortable. So in order to grow more compassionate, I really do think, because my Lord loves butter and soft, buttery hearts, and he's like, I'm going to make my people as compassionate as I can possibly make them. And the process is going to be really uncomfortable. Unless we give in to it. The moment we surrender to it, funny, it just, all right, fine. Once we start going with the flow, things change. If we don't resist being turned into butter, being ground into sandalwood paste, the process becomes much smoother. It's that resistance, the one where I'm like, but I still want to be in charge. And that usually creates the friction, which creates the heat and the fire and all the stuff that I don't like. I'm going to try and surrender faster. I know that was a really long answer to that question. It's a super long answer.
There's a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see
Yeah.
it.
So the question is like, Krishna will trouble you unless, yeah. I want to say unless we go with the flow, but that's, look what he did to his family. You know? And I'm not even talking about the extended family like Arjuna, you know. I'm talking about his parents. He was a bad kid. So I want to say Krishna's going to trouble us unless and until we go with the flow. But Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Lord Nityananda says something to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that was extremely poignant. At one point in his life, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu turns to Lord Nityananda, and they're like brothers if there ever were any. And he says, Lord Chaitanya says, I'm going to go to Gambhira, and I'm going to do some really intense things. Lord Nityananda is like, great, I'm down, let's go. He's like, no. You are going to go back to, like, Nadia. Like, go back to Navadvip, go back to the whole Bengal region. I'm going to go to Puri. And he's like, go back. Leave you? Why would I do that? He's like, you're going to go get married. He's like, I'm going to what? Like I was fine. I was doing my own things. Like, no, no, you're gonna go get married, gonna go have children, have a life. It's like, after starting a Harinam revolution with you, you want me to go have a life. Yes. And Lord Nityananda at that point says, you know, I can only I can only chalk this up to you are very fond of troubling your very own people. You are always going to tell us the things that we don't want to hear at that moment and ask us to do the things that we don't feel like doing. Fine, I'm going to go do it. But that one line of Lord Nityananda, you are very fond of troubling your own people. My sister likes to hold that against me. Whenever I go and I complain about, could be anything, weather, anything. And I'm always, why? Why? And she's, must be close. Because this is what he does to his people. So I'd like to think that at some point he'll stop troubling us. But it just seems as though the closer you are, the more trouble he puts you in. So Indra Prabhu has written, he's like, even when that little boy he will trouble me until I'm at my wit's end and I might want to cry. He says, but still, there's something about him that I know I will never give up. And that's the goal. To get to that point where, can't live with him, can't live without him, but I can't live without him. I refuse. Even when he's going to go and steal all the things that I hold valuable, and if I've somehow found a way to lock up those valuable things and he can't find them, he'll go and pee on the floor and pinch sleeping children. That is unnecessary. Really, sometimes I wanted to, like, excuse me, young man, sit down. Why? Why are you taking it out on the children? If you've ever tried to get a child to go to sleep and then they're asleep and then somebody comes and pinches them, yeah, I'd chase him with a stick too. I might want his mom to tie him up one time. But even when they went to complain, it didn't matter. By the time they got there and they said, your son did a whole bunch of things, but really, it's okay. It just gives us a chance to come and tell you about your son, because then he's going to stand there and look completely innocent and cry out of indignation. I can't believe you'd say these things about me. I'm the hardest working person in this village. All I do is herd cows for the benefit of all of you. And everybody's just ungrateful. It gives us a chance to come here and see that face that we've been singing about for the past month. The one rubbing his eyes and crying. Necklace of pearls around his neck, marked with 3 lines like a conch shell. It's now shaking because he's hyperventilating. This is the same boy who troubled his mother, pulled down twin trees in the backyard. So I want to hope that one day he'll stop troubling me, but that's for my own, like, comfort. Right? That's like my own, like, it would feel a lot better if you stopped doing this. But what if he did stop? What if he did leave? They say if Krishna doesn't come steal butter, the cows won't give milk, because what's the point? I can say it makes me uncomfortable, but if he didn't make his presence known in my life, I'd be one really, really depressed person. Sometimes, when we chant, and then those stories don't come to mind, we're like, what? Why'd you leave? Why'd you go away? I mean, I was only going to give 65% of my attention to this japa, but I wanted you to be there. You should still be there because you've always been there. So as much as I gripe and moan and, like, fuss about it, do I want him to stop troubling me? Do I want him to say, okay, I'll go away? I think absolutely not. So do what you got to do. If that's how you put your stamp on me and you say this one is mine, then I guess fine. So yeah, I amend my answer. There is no unless. That Krishna's going to trouble us, and then we want him to trouble us more. Oh, thanks. That last one made me a little bit emotional when I thought about the fact that, wait a second, I might spend more time asking him to go away so I forget him. That's a problem. I don't want to do that. If I had to choose, I guess, see, now we've come back to lifelong promises for the people that you love. Fine. I promise to let you trouble me for the rest of my existence. As if I had any control over it.
Ananga, Ananga Sundari is asking, she says that, so Krishna, if Krishna doesn't trouble us, does that mean we're not dear to him?
I think he's troubling all of us. There's nobody that can say, they're like, I'm fine. I've never been troubled by God. Now, we might put a different word on it, right? Now, we might decide that it's not Krishna, because then it's easier for us not to have to surrender. But I don't think there's anybody he's not troubling. I don't think you ever have to worry about, and sometimes, I think like the back end of that question is, so wait, what happens if he goes away? He's never going to go away. It depends on if we've said, okay, I want to see you. And my mom, she used to pray that, and then she kind of like she's changed the wording a little bit, because then things would happen. And she's like, what, what is happening? Krishna, why is he moving my life this way? And then my sister, she has a very good knack of seeing things from both sides, mostly his side, but also like both sides. And so she's always like, well, you asked, you said, oh my Lord, I want to see your presence in my life. And now here he is making his, himself known. And I'm like, why are you always on his side? It's a problem. I think I'm going to start rethinking, because she's on his side. And there are very many people. I've read stories, and there are people that the gopis do not go to for advice. But they get the advice anyway. And then they think, yeah, but how much can we put the stock in your advice because you're his cousin? Like, of course you're going to tell me this. Like, he's a nice boy. He wasn't trying to steal all of your garments and butter and like, valuables. He wasn't. He was just, heightening your love for him. Those people, the ones who tell you that, they're on his side. I've seen it. My own spiritual master included, on his side. I have to figure out a way to talk to the people on whose side I can be. That's when I go and I pray to Srimati Radharani with all the tears. Mom, there's a problem. Make him stop. Because she has a name. He controls the entire universe, but there's one person. Willfully, always under the control. So, as a youngest sibling, the first thing you learn is how to tell on people. I say tell on him. Anybody who will listen, his parents, Radharani, because then maybe she can tell his parents. I say tell on him. If he's doing too much, the minute it gets to be too much, you go and tell. That's what everybody in Vrindavan did. It didn't stop him, but it maybe helped him understand that it was a little too much. You could even tell his brother, because sometimes he'll listen to him. And his brother has a very good way of saying, you've gone too far. Why are you doing this? So many times, so many pastimes. Balaram's like, why? Why are you like this? Why do you always go too far? Pastime of Kaliya. Krishna's doing the most. Stuck in Kaliya's coils for hours, it says. finally, Balaram shouts to him, because Balaram is on the bank of the Jamuna, and he says, "You've gone too far. Like, I get it, you want to heighten their experience, but they're all fainting. There's only so many times that the human body can faint before you kill them all. Then you'll be sad because you'll have no one to play with. Maybe you should rethink your plan. Kill the demon and be over with it. Like, why are we..." And it is at that moment that Krishna decides, okay, fine. And then he banishes Kaliya. But these are the people that can get him to do something. I cannot, but I know who to go to. So, if Krishna's not troubling you enough, if you feel like I've been abandoned, go tell on him. If you feel like he's troubling you too much, also go tell on him. The point is that we read extensively, right? We have to do our research, and we have to dive deep into Bhagavatam so that we know who's on our side. So I say we all go, make sure you do your research and know who to tell for what particular thing. If you feel like you've been abandoned and he's the love of your life and he hasn't been there in a long time, maybe you want to tell Radharani because she can understand that kind of rasa. Like, you don't really want to go to somebody's mom for relationship issues. Don't do that. But you can go tell Radharani. If you have an issue where you feel like he might not listen to his parents, tell Balaram. Also then know that that puts a target on you, because then Balaram's like, well, what are the real motivations behind all of this? And then he has a plow. And that plow is really good at getting to the core of our issues. So tell Balaram, but also be prepared to be exposed. So, one more question. So Shardiya is saying, Bhishma relished fighting with Krishna, and Krishna experienced it as a loving exchange. So does Krishna arrange this experience to satisfy Bhishma's desire to fight with him, or to satisfy his own desire to fight with someone? Is Bhishma's eternal relationship with Krishna in the same mood, or is it just this particular pastime? As far as I know, that's his particular pastime, because that Vasu, who he was before Bhishma, he had no desire to really fight with the Supreme Person. But Bhishma, as a warrior, so there are desires that we carry with us from previous lives. There are desires that come upon us in this life. So the question, does he do it to satisfy Bhishma's desire or his own desire? Krishna, as Akila Rasamritamurti, see, I had a Sanskrit for one of them, means that Krishna can fulfill and reciprocate with all desires at the same time, fully, unlimitedly. So the answer is both. Krishna has a desire to fight, and so sometimes he exerts that desire. We see this in the case of Jambavan. Jambavan was also a devotee. For yugas, he was a devotee. Now all of a sudden he's going to fight with Krishna. And wholeheartedly, right? Krishna's not going to... He did that when he was young, right? He had wrestling matches with his cowherd friends. And even then, the cowherd boys were not thinking, this is Krishna and he's God and so therefore stronger than me. The cowherd boys were thinking, this is Krishna who I beat every day in wrestling. He can't beat me. So Jambavan is wholeheartedly into this Leela. Bhishma is wholeheartedly into it. And yes, there is the desire to serve, which I love because Krishna can meet you anywhere. If you are the most argumentative person on earth, Krishna will make a situation where he'll be able to argue with you because he'll accept that as service, even if you didn't mean it as service. How crazy is that? Even if you didn't mean it as service, if you find it in a certain way, and you now are arguing with the Supreme Person, he's going to accept it as a service. I don't usually see Krishna accept those offenses on him personally. Like, there are very few times. Usually what happens is, the catalyst is, you've offended one of his people. Right? Because we've just established that Krishna can accept anything as service. So then how in the world does Krishna even get angry and kill bad guys in the first place? Somebody did something to his people. And so he says, it's like offenses to my devotees are worse than offenses to me. Because as king of the loophole, he'll find a way to accept your offense as a service. But if it happens to one of his people, he has a hard time finding the loophole in that. Because he's like, I have to protect them. Those are my people. So yeah, Krishna will find a way to accept and reciprocate with your desire and fulfill his own desires. And also that Akila Rasamrita Murti means he can also reciprocate with every single jiva, and you'll never feel any lacking from him. That's the part I like most. He can satisfy everybody's desires and still make sure yours are completely fulfilled. So in several places, yeah, in
I'm
several
sorry,
places,
Shiva,
last thing
there's
is,
something in the chat box.
mm-hmm,
Bhishma relished fighting from Saradia.
yeah, that's the
And
one.
that would be the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap up. It's almost 9.
So yeah, all that to say, Krishna loves you. That's the takeaway.
No, the takeaway is the king of loopholes. That's the takeaway. It's somehow your definitions are so striking every time. Thank you. All right, everybody's bowing down. Okay. Thank you very much, Achyuta Gopi. Thank you very much, everyone, for your questions, for your contributions to class. Ananga Sundari, troubles are coming. You're dear to Krishna, and so is everyone else on this call. Thank you, Achyuta Gopi. We can't wait to spend the next Ekadashi with you. Okay? Everyone have a wonderful day. Remember Krishna. Wait for your troubles. They're customized by Krishna for your edification. And he's our best friend. He'll make sure it's for our benefit. Right? It should have been. Am I right?
That's right. He's gonna figure out a way.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Achyuta Gopi Devi ki jai. Hare Krishna.